All right. Hey, welcome back to One Leg at a Time, the podcast. I'm your host, Dean Anbar. And this week, had a conversation with Francisco Ojeda. Francisco is a great bass player, but he's also a music engineer. He's also a music editor. He's got his hands full with a lot of different projects, and it was interesting talking to him about the things that kind of drive him and push him through. Got kind of a unique idea of what he wants and how he's gotten it. To me is unique. I have to say, every conversation that I've had so far has been so different, and I could write a book on like how different people manage their challenges. I have so many thoughts about like, well, you know, yeah, obviously I have an addict and I sort of like took my compulsions to an unhealthy degree, but that doesn't exempt anyone else who hasn't necessarily gone through those types of challenges from having their own, you know, issues and sort of overcoming them in their own way. And so, I don't know, it's been a really kind of redemptive lap in a sense of going through and like at least coming from this side of the things that I've dealt with to now be able to go back and speak with people about what it is that they do. It's very fulfilling. So I'm going to plug my record that came out in 2019 called To Put Into Words, because Francisco played bass on that and also engineered it. Of course, you can subscribe to One Leg at a Time on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple, and on Amazon. And that's it for now. So thank you, and check out this week's interview with Francisco Ojeda.
Bin of this sculptor who made all these nice pots and stuff, and then he had these weird ones in like a bin. He was like, if you want them you can have it. We were like, oh my god, yes, of course.
But you're saying the frog came with the house.
Frog came with the house.
Cool.
Frog comes with the house.
Frank, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
One leg at a time.
I'm honored.
You know, I sit and I think about
how long
like,
have we known each other?
Well, that's a really good question.
It's a good question.
And I was going to ask you that question because I don't really know.
We started playing at Nowhere Bar.
How did we get introduced?
Through that. I'm pretty sure. Well, we both worked at that.
But who was the connection?
Program. Carter. Carter is the link.
Is that really true?
Carter is the link. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I knew you because we had those conference calls for this teaching place. Remember?
Right. Oh, yeah. Of course.
And you were very talkative on those calls. And I was like, who is this talkative guy? I don't know. And then Carter was like, do you want to sub on this gig with this, you know, with you? And that must have been early 2018, I think. I'd never taught kids that young, and I'd never been in an actual classroom. Like, I'd done private lessons.
Yeah.
I taught at NEC Prep, which was like really, really serious kids, you know. And then the Loud program was literally like kids in Echo Park, 11-year-olds in Echo Park, like
right,
mucking the fuck about, you know.
It was
hard.
A test. It was a real test. I had never done an actual middle school program. Like I've taught that age before, but I hadn't done anything at a school, after school program. I mean, those kids were wild.
Those kids were wild.
Yeah.
Those kids were wild. And it was a lot of like classroom management, which I had no skills for, you know. I didn't.
You don't need to have training in your field to do something like that. You need to have training in how to manage.
In how to manage kids,
a group of 10, 12 to 14-year-olds.
12 to 14-year-olds.
That's what you need.
At an after-school program.
Yeah.
The Loud program. May it rest in peace. I taught a lot in Boston.
Yeah.
And that was like the knife in the coffin. That's where I was like, you know what? No more teaching for me. I'm done.
It has to be on the right terms, I think, unless you really like it, which a lot of people do. When I was in high school, we did have a great arts program, and we were outside of Chicago. And, we're in the suburbs, but there was this woman named, and she was like the queen of Midwest jazz education. And
wow.
She had a lot to do with funding. I mean, when you're a kid, you look at this woman like this, and you're just like, she is so weird. I've never met anyone like this. Like, she doesn't really operate like any other adult I know. And now looking back on it, it's just like, thank God for people like that, because she put like the right people in front of kids like me. And it was like, these guys are cool. Mm. There was this this saxophone player, cool guy named Gerard. He would come in, he had a goatee, and he would like show us bebop licks, and it was just like, this is cool.
Yeah.
And it's half an hour away from us, and it's a completely different world than anything I've like really ever seen, and it was very appealing.
It only takes one person too. That's the thing. Like you expose a kid just once to the right person or the right scenario, and it might actually change their lives. Like it might actually.
Yeah, you could have been that for some of the kids in the OLAAT program.
I hope so.
I hope so too. I'm sure. In your case, I think absolutely. How could you not have been?
People were that for me. So,
Well, I want to know who was that for you. Let's go back.
Let's go back.
Let's get into the Ojeda archives.
Let's do it.
Who are you?
Who am I? Oh, fuck.
You grew up
Coral Gables, picturesque town. Coral Gables, honestly, is Pasadena. It's less distant than from the center of town.
Okay,
but it's Pasadena, and I say this because we moved recently, and I worked. I felt like I worked very tirelessly to get the fuck away from Coral Gables. I was like, never live somewhere like that again. No way. And I was driving home the other day, and I was like, son of a bitch, you moved to Coral Gables. You fucking idiot.
When did you start playing music?
I started playing when I was like 13.
Yeah.
And I had started playing guitar earlier, but I was never very good.
Was guitar your first instrument?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Had a Epiphone SG.
I had an Epiphone Les Paul.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mine was covered in Hot Topic stickers. So cool.
I got mine from Sam Goody.
Oh my God. I forgot about those. Sam Goody.
Yeah.
I don't know if they still exist.
Oh, they definitely don't. Yeah.
We had Specs in Miami, very similar to Sam
I
Goody.
remember Specs because my grandparents lived in Miami Beach. They lived in Bal Harbor.
Okay. Wow.
So,
yeah, that's a great place for grandparents to live.
Yeah.
They thrived there.
They did great. The real funny thing is my dad just bought a place there.
In Bal Harbor?
Yeah. He's fulfilling a prophecy.
He's fulfilling a prophecy.
Yeah.
Like the prophecy has been foretold. He's not kicking and screaming against it and then dying in Florida anyway. He's like accepting his fate.
All right, let's just take it easy. He bought an apartment. He didn't buy a coffin.
An apartment in Florida is a coffin.
Okay.
An apartment in Florida is a coffin. Excuse me. It's the same thing. There was a punk band that was really good. At least I remember them being really good, and I have no access to their music, so it's just like...
Were they local?
They were local. They're called Citizen Kane.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they were great. And they were like 11th graders. So they were like really cool.
Okay.
And the bass player from Citizen Kane sold me his bass, which was an Ibanez with a Patrick Star sticker. He sold it to me for $20. I started playing bass. And I was like playing once. And a friend of mine, someone I went to school with, was like, you're good at that. You should do that. And that's like, that changed my whole life. I was like, okay.
It's funny how that can happen, right? The influence of like an offhanded remark can hit you the right way where you're like, okay, I didn't know that I was good at this.
I'll do this for the rest of my life now.
I didn't know you thought of me this way.
Well, also, I just wasn't, I feel like as a kid, you can only be good at two things. You can be good at sports or academia. There isn't much really else going on in an elementary, middle school, right? It's like sports and academia.
Yeah.
If you have neither going on, which in my case, I wasn't good at either. Played Magic the Gathering. I was just kind of like a dork.
You are speaking my language right now. Not with the magic part, but with the part of it took me a long time to even find the thing that I excelled at. And it just so happened to be the thing that I felt the deepest connection to. It was right around the same time that you picked up an instrument too. At the time, like as soon as I started identifying my emotional state, my scene was all of a sudden, I'm a metal kid. I'm a punk kid. Mm-hmm. I like ska now. It's kind of like these phases that feel like you're the core of your being when you're a kid really is like 3 months of your life.
Yeah.
But
you bought a Slipknot CD, like relax. Yeah.
My first concert was Slipknot.
Wow, that's a good one.
I was 12.
That's a lot.
No one should have given the green light for like 5 12-year-olds from the suburbs of Chicago to go downtown and see Slipknot.
You're fine.
Jury's out.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with it. And all of a sudden, I had this thing in my hands that I could start a band with my friends. And we could fulfill this fantasy of like, that could be us.
We can be cool.
I can be what I see in my dreams for myself. I'm doodling bands in my notebooks in school. I don't even know what this stuff is that I'm drawing. All of a sudden I have one.
People who got me into it.
Yeah.
Steve Harris of Iron Maiden was the first one.
You were a Maiden guy.
Huge, still am. Like, that is my like guilty pleasure, can listen to them anytime band.
Right on.
Are they objectively good? No. Are the songs goofy as fuck? Yeah, they're goofy as fuck. It's about like traveling through time and shit and whatever, riding on an eagle's back.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. I love that shit. I heard the intro for, I think it was Murderers in the Rue Morgue, which is on their second record, Killers. And I was like, that's it. It's like basses. It's got harmonics. It's got like all the shit in it. I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
So Steve Harris like got me into it.
So then you were a bass kid.
I was a bass kid. And then again, I was really not good at school. And I was playing, and a music teacher was like, you can go to college for that. And I was like, skirt, like wait. College for like, I can do that? And they're like, yeah, you just like audition.
When did you start playing upright?
So when I was like, 15 or something, someone was like, you can go to college for that. And I was like, oh, sick. So I looked up all
that idea was planted pretty early then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I looked up all these schools and their audition requirements. I feel like I was crazy when I was young, but
yeah, that's pretty forward thinking and motivated.
Dude, it's pretty premeditated. So I got these audition requirements, and all of them required double bass. So I was like, fuck, I got to learn upright bass if I'm going to pull this fucking thing off.
Yeah.
So my grandfather was nice enough to get me from Sam Ash an upright, which I shudder to think what that thing must have felt and played like. Got upright together literally for that purpose. Because I was like, if I don't get it together, if I don't like get into one of these schools, I'm going to end up at FIU, which is like the local, it's a good school. It's a good school.
Yeah.
I wanted to get out of Miami so bad.
Yeah.
That I would, practice upright bass and get it together for that. So, I got it together for like auditions and shit. Also which is it's a context, but my dad was a musician. He was a guitar player and a musicologist. So he mostly focused on Cuban music, and he would give these conferences and lectures, and he had a radio program in Miami called Cubanola, which was it was just about Cuban music. And so there was a underpinning there. It's not that this like came out of nowhere.
No, that's pretty huge as an influence.
That's a really big influence.
So you grew up, there was music was around, and you had idea of what somebody who deals with music in some professional capacity looked like.
Yeah, because my dad knew a lot of musicians in Miami, like in the scene there, because a lot of his show was interviews. So he'd like play, he'd kind of DJ. And then he'd, sit and interview somebody. So he knew a lot of these musicians, and these musicians were kind of just like around the house. And there were just people present in my life growing up.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew abstractly that you could be a musician. So I was like, shit, like I'll do this. And my dad also was really into jazz. So there was that like present in the house a lot.
Yeah.
So when I got into, upright, I got really into John Patitucci, which
of course.
I have a funny recent John Patitucci story, but John Patitucci was like, he made me know that it was like possible to be an upright player and electric player, and like a doubler, and like that's a thing you should do, and that's cool. I had all his records. I thought he was just like the coolest. And I remember, maybe I've told you the story already, but I remember Arturo Sandoval used to have a jazz club in Miami Beach, and I remember seeing John Patitucci there playing with Brian Blade and Adam Rogers, and
wow.
it blew my mind.
That sounds like a life-changing concert to see.
It was life-changing, but it was over my head. I still enjoyed it, but it was like holy shit, this is crazy. But at this point,
crazy how? Like you felt like this is the bar now, and I have to get this good, or just like I've never heard anything like this.
I've never heard anything like this.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like this either. Like I had at that point, still learning upright. Very, very like early into it, thumb position, putting your thumb up on the neck and getting up, higher around the body.
Let's assume I don't know.
That's hence my definition. Definition. You got to put the arm around the body, put the thumb on the string, and use, your four fingers now become these four fingers, and you're laying them over. And that was something so unbelievably hard, like conceptually in my head, that I was like, well, people aren't doing it that much. I was like, people aren't. They kind of do it sometimes.
Yeah,
like
right.
that's some freaky thing you do twice a year. You do it on Valentine's and New Year's or something.
Yeah, okay.
And Sean's like all over the bass and he's doing all this shit. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like this is, oh God. The other thing that was funny was that at that point, I thought jazz musicians that were like, in like whatever Downbeat magazine, I thought they were like conventionally famous, like Tom Cruise, John Patitucci.
I am guilty of having the same misconception.
Gwyneth Paltrow, Keith Jarrett.
Sure.
Equal. And I just remember him.
Because in my world, they were
way cooler. It was like way fucking cooler. I don't know if I saw Tom Cruise.
No, I'm with you.
He finishes playing and I'm like, okay, the Secret Service, the bodyguards are gonna, they're gonna grab him and put him in the helicopter and take him back to, whatever, the yacht off Miami Beach that he's staying on or like whatever. And he's just, everyone kind of leaves and he's just kind of there putting a piece in the case. And I was like, is no one seeing this? Like John Patitucci's loose. Like, oh my God. And I go and I say hi to him. And this is at the time that MySpace existed. And he was like, yeah, man, if you're ever in New York, like hit me on MySpace. We'll do like a lesson. And I have this goofy ass picture of me at like whatever, 16, doing thumbs up and like, with John Patitucci, like, oh my God.
Yeah. You keep him in your top 8.
Oh yeah, he was definitely a top 8.
Yeah. Did you start playing gigs when you were in high school or not yet?
No, not really. No. I didn't until I lived in Boston. And then I started. I was at NEC for 4 years, and then I was just working and gigging. And then I went to Berkeley for 2 years after finishing NEC for audio production.
Early on when we met, you played on my record and you also engineered it. And I would never really knew how you got into that outside of it just being sort of a passing fancy.
Yeah, I studied it. I don't know. I really like technology and music technology and I get really bored really easily. Which is like a blessing and a curse, but I just wanted something else to do and to apply myself to, and it felt like something related. I got to this point in the weird thing with Boston is that like everyone's there until no one is there. I like very quickly had all this fucking work. Like I was working all the fucking time.
Yeah.
And then I got this gig teaching at NEC Prep. And what freaked me out was that I knew what the next 10 years looked like, because everyone who stayed in Boston kind of had the same schedule, which was like, you have your wedding gig that gets you through to the winter. You have your teaching gig that gets you through the winter. So you're teaching, you got your GB, GB casuals, and you do some balance of that. And that's what you do forever. And if you hang out long enough, you'll work at the Berkeley Harmony department. And that's it.
So you could see the trajectory very clearly.
Yeah. And you'll have a house in Methuen and, whatever. And I just saw that. I was like, the end of the hallway looked like that, and I was like, I don't want that.
I mean, I know how much you work. I know how hard you work. You've got a full plate of just doing the kind of work that you want to do, and still you go, well, but if I apply myself and I learn how to do some recording and I study that and I get that degree on top of that, then that could, to what capacity did you imagine like recording or production to be a part of your professional life?
I went through phases because, audio production program at Berkeley was very good, but they aren't really honest about what being an audio engineer really looks like. But I don't know. I mean, I went in really ignorantly with the idea that, I would get some sort of stable job that like you work at Conway Recording Studios and, you come in at 9 a.m. and it's Shania Twain today. And you say, which is like completely it doesn't work like that.
I don't think that's happened since the Beatles were recording at Abbey Road.
And people were in
trench
lab
coats.
Like, I don't think it's happened since then. Working in a studio seemed a little, I don't know, tedious, but there's all this really cool side work that comes from that, right? There's like mixing, there's production, and even within those things, there's like, mixing for television, there's, there's producing sync stuff, there's producing stuff for artists, there's, composition, recording for composers, prepping things for composers, whatever. So the initial like working in a recording studio, I did it for a while, and it was a lot of work. It was very little pay. It just wasn't what I wanted to do, really.
So you kind of find yourself in another situation.
In another situation
this
where
is a thing, but
I gotta pivot again.
Yeah.
I still like mixing a lot. I still mix for people. I like production. Producing music is really fun, but I think the business end of it is very difficult.
It's difficult because there's like no standardization whatsoever. So
There's
you
no
really have to be willing to fight for a piece of the pie.
Yep.
And it's really easy to get taken advantage of.
Yep.
And if
and you have to set boundaries. You have to, like what is this? What's going on? Who am I? What am I relative to this? Yeah, it's tough. It's really fun, but it's a tough hustle.
Yeah.
Good.
How did you start working at Clear Lake Studios? That's the one that we recorded
I started working there because I realized I was like, oh, like the traditional like intern to like engineering path takes a really long time and a lot of dedication, and it doesn't necessarily mean payoff. But I was like, wait, I'm playing in town. Why don't I just basically freelance out of the studio?
Mm-hmm.
So I approached them, which was, I think it was smart, but I approached them and I was like, basically, I'll bring you, if you give me a discount on the room, I'll bring clients here. They'll pay the room. And if you need someone on sessions, you can call me, but you don't need to call me. Basically, I'll bring you work. You don't have to do anything. Basically, just let me work here.
Interesting.
And I had interned there for a little bit, but yeah, I started realizing that basically you can book any studio. I didn't know this.
Yeah.
And you didn't show you this at Berkeley. You can book any studio without an engineer, and you can engineer there. Like if you want to, you want to do East West tomorrow, we can book it. I can engineer. Your cousin, Phil can engineer, whoever you want.
You know Phil?
He's a great guy. Not a good engineer. Good
no.
guy. Great mechanic. Bad engineer. So I just started freelancing out of these spots, and it was a way quicker way to like get in the room and actually work. And then you show value to these like studio owners, and if they're ever in a pinch, they're like, oh, I need this thing, I can call him. He knows the room. He'll do the thing. So that's how I got in at those places. I was working with composers a lot, and because composers are the best. Composers record a lot. Like they need a high volume of things recorded. An artist puts out, a record a year, if that, a composer, on a TV series is like they're doing tons of cues and they need a lot of stuff. So I started working with composers more, both as an engineer and as a bass player. In 2020, something happened to all of us. Work slowed down.
Sure did.
It sure did.
Yeah.
Got into music editorial. So I'm a music editor.
I was wondering when that started to take priority in, the sort of mixed bag of things that you do.
The other thing is I just have been trying for a while to like, I don't know, find, again, I get really easily bored. So I like to find other things to do. I realized later in life that I like stability more than I think I let on as a younger person. I'm like,
I think that's a natural evolution, right? Again. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things you get older and it's just like, well, if I want things to be a certain way, like they don't just happen in a bubble.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing about, I'll say this, anytime I've like felt the need to kind of like level up, it's just because my standards have changed.
Mm-hmm. What you want ends up changing. And the reason you want it also ends up changing.
Yeah. Which is a good thing.
It is a good thing. It'd be very boring if not, if I'm 34, if 34-year-old you and 22-year-old you want the same things, you should maybe do a little introspection and figure.
Well, you just kind of are boring at that point. See, what's interesting about hearing you talk about this stuff is you've always been a lot more grounded in a practical reality, even in an industry that is insane. And it's even just to call the music industry an industry at all is
almost a stretch. Yeah,
it's a farce.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder about people like you, because I only am myself, right? And so like it always kind of has like escaped me a little bit of like, what do I have to do to like be more corral, like to get the stability? I don't know. I mean, it's always
It's different
felt
for
like,
everyone.
and I think part of it too is that outside of really just like playing, like self-expression is so important to me internally. What I really like
Mm-hmm.
is jamming out.
Yeah, I just like playing.
You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. That's the thing at the core of it. It's
Yeah.
like it's how do I free myself up? At least the way I see it anyway is just how do I free myself up to enjoy this as much as I can?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that looks like different things for different people, you know, like
It does.
some people enjoy that most when it is the thing that they feed themselves with. I enjoy this the most because this is how I pay my fucking bills, homie. Like this is the shit.
That's the hustle.
So, some people it's the opposite. Some people it's like, you know, I do something completely different. I'm an accountant and I play 2 gigs a month, and those are so amazing to me because I don't have to, you know.
Yeah, but you might have a $10,000 PRS.
Nice.
If you're an accountant,
Blues
you can afford
lawyer.
it. Yeah,
Blues lawyers, baby.
Pretty cool.
God
Yeah.
bless them. Buying those 50 strats.
Hey, have you seen my Dumble?
Yeah. This is a 53 strat. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Were strats around in 53?
I don't know when they started. I don't know when they. I know
If you have a 53 strat, you might actually have something very rare there.
You might have something. I mean, you definitely have something that's
impossibly rare,
coveted very much by the blues lawyer community.
Yeah, I think 57 may have been
57?
the first year of the strat. Yeah,
dude. What about 1942? You got that 1942 strat.
Sure, World War II era.
World War II strat when they were making them out of steel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, because wood was a coveted resource. Yeah.
Wood was used to make the boats.
Sure,
that they paddled across the Atlantic.
The U-boats, the I-boats.
No, U-boat. No, man. Don't tell me what to fucking do. Don't tell me what to boat.
Well, I was saying that I admire your ability to both be rooted in your passions and also have the foresight to look for things that will provide stability and the discipline to follow through with whatever what you need to do to make those a reality. I've never been good at tackling my responsibilities, you know, without looking like I'm an escapist, I think, just by nature. So given that, I look at somebody like yourself, but also like we are in a city of very capable and smart people.
That's what I like. That's what drew me to be here. Was that there were so many people doing so many different things and balancing out things in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And it wasn't weird because I remember living in Boston, small city, and being like, you know, I had all these, you know, these music connections and being like, oh yeah, I'm studying to be an audio engineer. I am an audio engineer or whatever. And people looking at that and thinking, well, he's doing that because he's not that good a musician. Right.
I totally know what you mean.
Which is a small way of thinking. But here there's like, man, you hear all types of shit here. Yeah, I'm a choreographer, I'm a videographer, I'm a bass player, and I make pottery.
Yeah.
And here it's kind of like, cool, let me see your pottery. Could you choreograph this video?
Yeah.
Could you make the video and could you play bass on it? Because there's just so many people doing so many different things and it's not a problem. And I think a lot of the people that I look up to the most in town, that's the vibe. It's like they're a great bass player, but they're also a great engineer and producer or, you know, whatever, some other bunch of shit. Like people do a bunch of shit here, which is it's a really nice feeling as opposed to, that sort of like dogmatic, like anything that deviates you, and some people get really microscopic with it, anything that deviates you from being a jazz bass player, then you're not actually that good at that because you do other things. And it's like, that's not...
The orthodoxy doesn't really serve anyone.
Oh my God, no. You just become this sort of like character, this Looney Tunes character that can do,
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as jazz in and of itself becomes, unfortunately, less and less relevant to what's popular,
I feel very passionately that the whole like you need to suffer for your art. If you're really an artist, you're suffering. Anybody who sells you that shit is selling you is snake oil conning you. They're conning you into not really.
There's a distinction to be made between paying your dues and suffering for your art.
Yeah, you don't have to suffer.
you shouldn't have to necessarily suffer. And that's not the same thing as you don't get a pass from working hard.
No, you don't get a, right. I understand what you mean. Yeah, you do not get you still have to work hard, but this sort of like, yeah, no, to really do the thing, I have to have like, 7 roommates and live, God knows where,
Right.
and be out until,
well, you do that for a little bit, but you do it circumstantially because it makes sense. And I think looking back on it now, one of the hardest things is to sort of realize like, oh, well, those are the conditions that sort of yield like output, because you don't want to be home if you have 7 roommates and your kitchen is disgusting and the whole place stinks, and like one guy's up till 5 a.m. and another guy's waking up at 7. So there's no quiet and ever. You don't want to be in the house. You want to be out. You're meeting people. You're working as hard as you can, kind of to get away from that. That's one of the things where I look at someone like you who's just like, all right, you're still working. You're never really satisfied. Like you keep saying you get bored. I don't know. I will say you may be saying that you're getting bored. I think that what you have is like a drive, and you're not really like, you're not settling.
Yeah. I don't know. I just want to do, I don't know. I want to do more. And, yeah, I feel like I do get bored very easily. I do have a drive to there's like an idea, there's something that I want, but I get bored. And
so what is boredom? Like, what is that like? What is the experience of boredom for you that you then go like, all right, well, I'm going to study engineering instead?
It sounds lame, but it's maybe lame, but there's like a thing, I guess you're right. I guess it's drive. There's a thing I want. And there's like a goal place that I'm trying to get to. I have small goals and then I have big goals, and I'm pretty intentional. Like I have like 5-year goal, 10-year goals, small micro goals. And once I feel like I can't hit that goal, doing the thing that I'm doing, I'm like, okay, wait a second. What can I do here? How can I change this?
How do you keep track of the small term goals, the long-term goals? Like, how does that stuff stay in your purview while you're doing all the things that you're doing?
I write them down.
You do?
I write them down, and
so they're deliberate.
They're deliberate. Yeah. They're deliberate, and they're I don't know if you're like this. I don't know if everyone's like this, but like I
don't think anyone is the same. And that's the thing that it's been really fascinating doing this, talking to people this way, is because like, obviously a goal is a goal. That's universally true. But the things that people prioritize and the way that they get there, like,
is very different.
It is different. It honestly is super interesting to me, because these are things that I have struggled with. Like, outside of like the obvious struggles, like, yeah, okay, fine, I was a drug addict. Cool. But
well, it's not, the whole thing is that it's not cool.
Actually, I thought it was great.
Oh,
and I'm very grateful to be on this side of it and sort of have that as it in and of itself is really just a symptom of a whole bunch of other stuff. And some of that is this, right? Where it's like, I really had a hard time figuring out even what my goals were, let alone to stick to them. Because outside of the, like we were saying before, like, yeah, I love jamming out, but it's just like, okay, but I have my idealistic loves. And then we have like the reality of, here we are in this city in this time, and like what's really going on.
The not sexy kind of meat and potatoes, yeah.
So I have been working on these things in my personal life to just like, all right, these are the goals. Set them, figure out a way to execute them, figure out what's the difference between a long-term goal and a short-term goal, and like understand the difference between those two things and figure out a way to manage the time so that you can do all those things. And then on top of that, figure out a way to not go crazy, because again, for me, like obviously my mind can go nuts, and like I've found ways before to essentially destroy myself in real time, and like, so we got to avoid that.
Yeah.
So like, what do I do?
Gotta be sustainable.
Yeah. So like, what do I do to find the things that will work for me to be able to just kind of like do all this? And you know this because we know each other, but like obviously a big part of it was sort of like finding my physical health, and like that has become in and of itself a really important thing to me.
It helps a lot.
But the thing that I kind of had to, because again, talk about escapism, you know, I was treating myself like I'm training for the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
And like that became like a sole focus for a little while. And it's just like, wait, hang on.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I'm doing this right now, like I'm not getting anything done, you know, because all I'm doing is like running and working out. It's like, I always am so curious, like, how do you just, like, if you like drinking a beer, how do you just have a beer? Or if you like running, like I do, it's like, how do you run and not want to run for 15 miles? Like, because I do that. I run until my fucking knees don't work anymore, you know? I know how busy you are. Like, you know, this is
somewhat busy.
Francisco Ojeda. Some call him Paco. What do you prioritize, like, for your mental health? Just and how does that end up looking?
Exercise is really important. Having a like routine and exercise.
What's your routine look like?
I go to the gym 3 to 4 times a week.
Yeah,
that's it. And I have like a list of things that I, you know, like a structured day by day list of things that I do. That's important. Setting time to be with my wife is very important.
You have a wife.
I do have a wife.
And your wife works in the film and television industry.
She works in the film and television industry. She's a writer.
Yeah.
She is on Will Trent at the moment for ABC.
That's awesome.
She's very...
you two are really kind of like a Hollywood power couple.
No, we're just a couple.
You got your Brad and Angelina, they're still a thing, right? And then you got Francisco and Laura.
Flora and Fauna.
Uh-huh.
You have to, I don't know, at least for me, you have to fucking manhandle it in, because all these things are vying for your time. And if you don't will them into existence, they will not happen.
That's real.
You know, like right now, technically I'm working. Had I not manhandled and just been like, I'm going to be gone for an hour for this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
If I don't make time for Laura in the weekend, that's not going to happen. Some other thing will unconsciously take it over.
Yeah.
If I don't make time away from Laura to take a gig, the gig's not going to happen because she's going to eat it up. If I don't make time for both those things, I'm just with friends and I don't make any time for friends, you know what I mean? You really have to I feel like you have to set it first and then let things work around it, because there are all these forces that will, if you don't manage them and set boundaries on them, you'll have no time in your day. You'll never exercise.
Yeah.
You'll never see your friends. You'll never see your wife. Because you're doing God the fuck knows what, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like just being intentional and like setting it, like, even though I'm like working and I have some things to do, like me and Laura are taking a trip, and I'm not 100% sure that it's going to be okay. I haven't like cleared it with everyone in the world.
Uh-huh.
I said it, and it's going to happen. And if someone's like, you know, oh my God, I absolutely need you here for X, Y, or Z, we can figure it out. You know, it's going to be fine. But it's like, I've been learning more to like live my life first and let things work around it than the opposite. And it's been really scary, but it's been okay. Every time I've done that, kind of like, yeah, just set it and like let, you know.
How do you deal with that stress? It can sit with me when I'm like, oh my God, this other thing just came up and I said I was going to do this other thing. Like, that's the kind of thing that can really...
Yeah, that shit stressed me out.
Weigh me down in a way that like, I'm like non-functional almost. Unless I really, really, really... And again, it's something that I'm like learning to do in real time.
It's hard. I mean, I don't have it down either, you know, but I find that my therapist tells me this, you know, it's like, but schedule the non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Schedule the non-negotiables. Just do it. The things that are negotiable, they will work out. It will be fine. A lot of things, you know, things are going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
So like live your life first, especially like the music industry, the film industry, all this stuff. Like these industries don't give a fuck about your schedule. They don't give a fuck. It's literally like, call, can you get to the recording studio right the fuck now? They don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So, and I know it's maybe not the best way to think about it, but a lot of times I'm like, if it doesn't give a shit about me, why am I going to give a shit about it? Someone calls me right now for a recording session, drop everything, drive over here. There's just as much chance that they're like, hey, sorry, yeah, we figured, yeah, sorry, we're going in another direction, sorry.
Yeah.
You know, like, so why am I going to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can only do so much. I can't just like, be here waiting,
It's cool to hear you say that you're essentially trying to like find and keep yourself in, in the midst of all of that, the insanity of and the chaos. It's just like, yeah, no, that's good.
You've got to, because if not, the things won't happen.
Yeah.
The best you for you is the best you for everything around you in your life.
That's true.
So you have to, you don't want to be a dick. You don't want to like, it's non-negotiable for me to be up on a fucking mountain. How come my career isn't working out? Well, it's like, dog, you're up on a mountain. No one can fucking contact you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a realistic, lock-in. But
do you know a lot of mountain people?
No,
neither do I. You know why? Because they're up on a fucking mountain.
Because I'm a fucking mountain.
Yeah.
You can't hang out with them. You can't call them. They're not going to do anything.
Right, exactly.
It's hard to be a mountain.
You got to be on the grid.
Unless it's non-negotiable for you to be off the grid, which is fine. Just don't have goals that look one way and non-negotiables that look another way.
That's very fair. That's very valid. I've always kind of wondered this about you, and I don't have to get super into it, but you're one of the few people that I know that actually is like like faith is part of your life. Like going to church is part of your life. Even just going into your studio, there's a Bible on your desk.
There is.
That's pretty cool.
Reading the Bible this morning. Yeah, it's an important part of my life. I'm not I don't know. It sucks to say that you go to church because a lot of people think you're a jerk, and or you don't like gay people, or you don't like whatever. There's a lot of baggage with the church that I totally get.
Yeah.
But my faith is really important to me. It's something it's a practice just like anything else. And I'm very happy I have it. And yeah, it's an important thing.
I guess what I'm wondering is how that plays into all this other stuff. Because, I would assume, as I don't have necessarily a faith in a organized religion sense, I'm not reading a Bible necessarily, but I am reading texts that are very central to how I conduct myself.
Yeah. It's nice to have, I wasn't raised in the church.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's even wilder.
I got into it around 1920. I got really, serious about it and all that stuff. But it's, whatever it is, it's nice to have some amount of a manual, or like, it's nice to have like a 0 point. Like at least at this point, I know there's like a flag in the ground where I'm like, okay, that's kind of where I should be. Where am I? Okay, I'm kind of over here. Okay, ooh, maybe there's some things I can do to get back to a 0 point or like a structure point. And growing up, I never felt like I had that. So it was just kind of like adrift. It was just like, I'm away. Yeah, I don't know if that way is good or I don't know. It's just, I'm away. It's nice to have, and it doesn't have to be Christianity or faith in that way, but it's nice to, through whatever means, build a homeostatic point where you can at least be like, listen, buddy, you gotta kind of pull it up. You gotta get back to that place because you're not there, or whatever. You way too far left. You're way too far right. You're way too under. You're way too over.
Yeah,
and you can kind of come back to this place. So yeah, that's been helpful.
Yeah, I mean, of course. There's no way that it wouldn't. And if it wasn't helpful, I don't think that you would have...
I ultimately probably wouldn't have pursued it. But yeah, it just helped the structure and stuff, which is helpful. But,
I think that's beautiful. I think it's really cool to see it.
Wrapping the conversation about what I do, I basically, this is like a way long loop coming back, but in 2020, I started working as a music editor. So I kind of pivoted more into film and TV stuff, using that, like the fact that I worked with composers and like understood that stuff, and started working as a music editor. So I've been a music editor since then, which is really nice. I've worked on a bunch of different shows, which are fun. I worked with a company for a while. We did Atlanta seasons 2 and 3. We did Hacks on HBO.
Those are great shows.
Those are great shows.
Yeah.
They're great shows. I was really fortunate to work with a great company, and the hardest thing about being a music editor is that it is a union gig, which is nice, but it's very difficult to get in. And somebody let me into the editors union, a person, like a singular person. And that person changed my life dramatically and quantifiably. And I can be like, this person, like I can like give you their phone number. I can be like, this person changed my life.
Yeah.
So they got me into the union because they had a company. It's a whole thing.
So there's an editors union that's different from the musicians union.
Yes.
And this is an editors
The main
union
difference
gig.
is that the musicians union is useless and the editors union is very useful. You can't work these music editorial gigs for the most part unless you're in the union. So this gave me access to all these kind of different gigs. Yeah, I'm a music editor now. I don't know. I still play gigs pretty frequently and I still record a lot. But kind of day to day, I do music editorial and I really like it.
Yeah.
And that's what I do.
That is what you do.
That is what I do.
And you do it really well.
I hope so. I hope so.
I mean, listen, I always love hanging with you, playing with you, you know.
Let's do it soon.
From the humble beginnings of our friendship on Zoom calls with the OLAAT program.
No, they weren't even Zoom calls. They were straight phone calls.
They were phone calls. That's right. This is pre-Zoom.
This is pre-Zoom. Even in the times of Skype. But I remember doing those calls and like being in my bed and like putting it on speaker. I never spoke on those calls because it was just sort of like, what happened on those calls? We never did anything else.
No, it was, I think Carter was just looking for ways to
justify.
Well, he was honestly, I think he was just looking for ways to get us paid out.
We'd get 2 hours on Fridays, I remember.
So yeah, no, all it really is to say is it's great talking to you.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
My pants one leg at a time, like anyone else.
That's what we say.
Boom.
Should we have a catchphrase? I guess the catchphrase is you put your pants on one leg at a time.
Yeah.
Can I get you to face the camera and say, I put my pants on one leg at a time?
I put my pants on one leg at a time.
You heard it here first, folks. Thanks for tuning in.
What was the one with the rock?
Bye.
Put your pants on one leg at a time. One leg at a time. One leg. Put your pants on one leg at a time.